Sharon, you are on mute.
All right, thank you. Good evening, candidates, members, and to all in our viewing audience. Welcome to our Senate District 35 and 38 Forum. South Metro Democratic Women's Council is a local chapter of the Georgia Federation of Democratic Women, which is a sister chapter of the Georgia Democratic Party. Our chapter was formed in 2014, and we meet on the fourth Thursday of each month at 7 p.m. Our area covers all 8 cities in South Fulton area and a part of Southwest Atlanta. Our mission is to engage women of South Fulton in a variety of political activities, provide members with critical information regarding local issues, and organize education and voter registration activities for the community. You are now participating in one of these projects. And our fourth mission is to identify and encourage women to run for office at all levels. Let us take a moment for silent meditation. Amen. The rules of the forum are going to be introduced to you by our member, Brenda Floyd. Brenda, you're muted too. You're muted.
Good evening, everyone. Watch for the fan that indicates your time is up. If you do not adhere to the fan, you will be muted. The moderator will call on each candidate in the order she chooses. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer questions. If a candidate's name is called by another candidate, that candidate has the right to a 2-minute rebuttal. Each candidate's rebuttal shall be 2 minutes. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement. We'll now have Ms. Karen Thompson.
You're muted. Karen, you're muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to introduce to you our moderator for this evening, Ms. Elise Fisher, a natural innovator. She finds opportunities to promote positive change, even in the most ingrained institutions or mindsets. She is a professional certified coach. Her passion for helping others pursue individual growth, lead purposeful action, and drive sustained improvements began almost 20 years ago when she was selected as a charter member of GE Capital's Advanced Leadership and Facilitation Network. an internal group of highly valued associates entrusted to provide both executive coaching and workshop facilitation services for GE Capital's C-suite leaders. She began her career over 30 years ago as a finance professional in GE's financial management trainee program. A competent and trusted advisor, Elise's experience with workforce change initiatives is her foundation for helping others lead through both personal and professional transformation. She has planned and facilitated C-suite workshops and conclaves and coached executives of several prominent multinationals, including General Electric, Towers Perrin, Accenture, Kraft Foods, AT&T, Sears Holdings, and Nelson. Elise holds a bachelor's from Cornell University and a master's from the Darden Graduate School of Business. She is a certified practitioner of most personality and career assessment tools, including Myers-Briggs, DISC, and emotional intelligence. In addition to her professional coaching certifications, she is a certified project management professional and a certified nonprofit professional. She serves on the executive board for several nonprofits, including Claudette's Kids Foundation, the South Fulton Economic Improvement Foundation, the Town Creek Neighborhood Association, and the Cedar Grove Community Association. Elise?
Thank you very much for that introduction. Welcome candidates and welcome to all of our viewing audience. As shared earlier, we will start with Senate District 35 and then we will move to Senate District 38. With every question, each candidate will get 2 minutes. If a candidate's name is mentioned, that candidate will also get 2 minutes to rebut if they so choose. And we will start this session tonight with introductions. You have 2 minutes for your introduction, and we will start with Senator James, and we'll go alphabetical order by last name after that. Thank you. You are still on mute.
Is that better?
Yes.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for inviting us. I'm Senator Donzella James, and it's an honor and privilege to be on with you today. I have served in the legislature as your senator with honesty, integrity, and with hard work to make sure that we get our fair share of our tax dollars. I serve on the Economic Development Committee, and that is how I got involved in stopping a racetrack that would have been on Camp Creek Marketplace, where Camp Creek Marketplace is today. And you can go back and look up everything. I even have the shovel where we broke the dirt for that marketplace. But we stopped the racetrack because it was Indy 500 style. And the way we stopped it is with the legislation that I introduced and I fought for and fought with East Point. The mayor then was Pastor Hillier, with Atlanta, and with advocates from all over the South Fulton area. So, I've worked on that, on special judiciary. I'm the chairperson of Interstate Corporation Committee. I am in the leadership of the Senate, and I'm very honored to serve that way and make sure that I serve with honor for all of us and make sure that our issues are heard at all times and not just the majority party. Also, I'm the Education Committee. I've been on it for 8 years, and I changed so much with my legislation, probably about 18 pieces of legislation to make classroom sizes smaller, to make sure that our kids who have disabilities and mental challenges have a way to become citizens, accomplished citizens in the future. And the list goes on. And I don't know if my 2 minutes are up or not, but I have a whole
Yes,
lot more
the
to
fan
say.
is waving.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And sorry about that. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Next candidate, Lula Gilliam.
Hello, and thank you for having me as well. I was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and raised in Redwood, Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta. After leaving Mississippi after graduating from high school, I moved to California. I'm a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley. I have dual degrees from there. After talking to many of our constituents in District 35, I drew my priorities from there, and my priorities once elected will be educational excellence. I believe that all of our schools should be graduating our young people in the 95th percentile and higher. I also am going to deal with redefining public safety. What does that look like? Strengthening voter rights, improve affordable housing outcomes, initiate real criminal justice reform, develop greater mental health resources, and guarantee health care for all. There is a more extensive overview on my website that I get into the meat of these priorities. And if you go to electlulagilliam.com, that will explain what I just mentioned to you. I have a life of public service. 32 years ago, I founded Youth Enhancement Services, acronym YES, to address the academic and socio-emotional needs of young people who had dropped out of our local public schools. I assist them with getting their GED, going on to post-secondary options at local technical 2-year and 4-year colleges and universities. My whole life has been about upending generational poverty for our young people, because I know poverty intimately. I grew up in poverty in Mississippi. In addition, I am a life member of the Atlanta NAACP. I sat on the executive committee. I chair the education committee, and I have done so for the last 8 years. Okay, I'm on the Alliance Theater. And anyway, I just saw the fan. I'm a fan of voting too. So thank you very much, and I'll talk more about everything later.
Mike Glanton Jr.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank God for being here, first and foremost. It's been a long election cycle, but we are here 5 days away. My name is Mike Glanton Jr., and I'm running for Georgia State Senate District 35. And, you know, it's simple. You know, these days we have a lot of things going on around us, polarizing things. You know, you can turn on the news and you can see how legislation that Governor Kemp passed that disproportionately affects our community with gun violence and that constitutional carry law. You can see just by looking at the news over the last 2 weeks that we've had 2 officer-involved shootings where young men have gotten killed, as well as yesterday where somebody was killed with a mental situation. And so these pieces of legislation are extremely important to our everyday life and important to our future. You know, I was just thinking, like, what could I do as a legislator to really change things? And I think number one is by including more people. I'm so thankful for the people of Georgia for getting out and voting early. I'm happy about the turnout numbers. I hope they go higher, even more after tomorrow and going forward with Tuesday. But I think that's the key to more people being involved in legislation and starting to look like us, because more people are holding our elected officials accountable. And so I want to be the type of legislator that not only educates my constituents and the residents of the state of Georgia, but I also involve them. They can see they can see what they told me in the legislation that we're working on. I'm a big proponent of economics and education, as well as healthcare and taking care of our seniors. So we have a big, broad plate that I am ready to work on day one. My name is Mike Glanton Jr. So thank you for the fan, Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you, sir. And next, our 4th candidate, Whitney Kenner Jones.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for having us all here. I am, as you said, Whitney Kenner-Jones, and I am running for Georgia State Senate for District 35. I am a mother of two and married, and I have a master's degree in public administration. My undergraduate degree is in public health, and I have a law degree. I'm licensed in Oregon and in the state of Georgia. I decided to run for this position because I'm passionate about this community. I'm passionate about the people that we are elected to serve, and I want to be able to effectuate real change. In my everyday life, I am a child welfare law attorney. I represent the Department of Family and Children's Services in child abuse, neglect, and abandonment cases. And a lot of what I see on a regular basis is that the community has provided our individuals, whether it's families, children, the elderly, with the lack of resources and opportunity to make sure that they can provide sufficiently for themselves and to keep their families together. I'm passionate and charged up about making sure that we pass legislation that's going to positively impact the students that I see every day. We talk about public safety a lot, and I think that the crux of that is really making sure that we have legislation passed that assist individuals in making sure that they can earn living wage jobs, making sure that they have the knowledge and education to adequately parent their children, giving them tools and services to keep families together, prioritizing services that help people be independent and sufficient. And that's what I'm hoping to do if I'm elected to this position. I noticed a lot of the kids that I represent in court get into the same types of trouble that I got into when I was younger. And the only difference between me and the positive outcomes that I see in my life and the children who unfortunately sometimes don't always have positive outcomes was the fact that I was surrounded by a community of individuals who cared, a community of individuals that didn't mind, getting after you when that was required or necessary and making sure that you had what you needed to be successful. And I'm hoping to be able to change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Jones. So we'll start this next question with you, Mr. Glanton. You mentioned gun violence and the recent legislation, and here is the question. What is your position on gun control and HB 319 signed by the governor that allows Georgia gun owners to carry concealed handguns in public without first obtaining a license from the state?
Thank you for the question. All right, so I'm an avid Second Amendment supporter. I'm an avid gun owner myself. But I remember how proud I was when I worked extremely hard to maintain my integrity and things throughout my life, that once I received that gun license in the mail, I realized that, I had worked hard to earn that by having, not getting in trouble, by understanding the laws and things like that, right? I've also understood that me getting training, as well as understanding the power of that gun, and I'm not the only one, is extremely vital, right? So I started out with saying that constitutional carry, we're understanding that political rhetoric creates a narrative that people sometimes don't read the legislation. And so what we've had now, we have people that hold, we can carry a gun without a license. Now you have 10, at least that I can think of, young people that have had shootings within the metro Atlanta area since that law passed. And so that law disproportionately affects certain communities. And so I'm completely against that law. I am for gun control, but I want to assure people, like I said, I'm a Second Amendment supporter. So I'm not trying to take your guns away. I just want to make sure and ensure that we have control with people that are now carrying guns and road rage. We still have bad traffic. So road rage events are higher than they've ever been in our history, as well as mental instability. Yesterday, we had a young man go in and shoot a security guard in Fogo de Chao, and the officers returned fire and killed him. That was a situation that we could have probably prevented by putting measures in place proactively through mental health and through gun control to be able to start getting a handle on these things. Because, we're losing control right now. And so I think people are looking to their politicians to help them understand the laws, as well as help us enforce them and make sure that we're protecting people. Because right now, people don't feel like politicians are protecting them.
Thank you. Thank you. Candidate Gilliam, same question. What is your position on gun control?
I am in favor of gun control, and I believe that everyone should have to go through a background check in order to become a gun owner. Totally opposed to what Governor Kemp and the legislature just passed. You know, that's just very problematic. So I am definitely in support of gun control.
Thank you. Candidate Jones, would you prefer Jones or Kenner Jones?
Either or both is absolutely fine with me.
Okay, I'll stick with Jones.
Thank you.
Same question.
Yes, I am absolutely in favor of gun control. I too am a gun owner. My husband is a gun owner, but I definitely think that you have to be responsible in the way that you exercise that right. It is a large responsibility that has real life consequences for people's lives, and we need to take this seriously. The other thing that I will add that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to is the community that we serve is not the community that law was passed for. I think that it's going to have very real life consequences for our Black men and women when they are on the street, when police officers or other individuals are looking for probable cause or reasons to have suspicion for those individuals. And it will not matter that that individual was legally carrying that gun. The danger that it poses to their life is serious and it is significant. And we absolutely need to make sure that we have gun reform that protects people from gun violence, but also that shields individuals from being placed in troublesome situations when they are carrying a gun that they own legally and have a right to have.
Thank you. Senator James,
Yes.
same question. What is your position on gun control and that House Bill 319?
Well, I think my record probably speaks for itself in that I opposed it completely. I voted against it, and I continue to lobby with many of the legislators to try to get them to vote against it. We worked very hard to try to stop the legislation, to put amendments on it that would weaken it. We're not in the majority, so no matter what, it was very difficult to do. And so we can say all day long what we will do and how we can be against it, but you have to be there to fight, to negotiate, to some of them make deals, but the bottom line is we do not need weapons in the hands of any and everybody without a permit. The law enforcement was very aggravated about this particular law. When it got signed into law, you did not see the chief people over the police and the GBI and the different, you did not see them standing there applauding. They did not even stand there with it, most of them. So yes, and I know the significance of having a weapon because when I was only 19, my husband and I bought our first store and it was in downtown Atlanta. So we needed weapons to make sure that we were protected and we protected everyone around. And my son is law enforcement, and he was not even for this law as well.
Thank you. And I'll stick with you, Senator James, for this next question.
Thank you.
Given that Republicans rule here in the state of Georgia, how do you build support for Democratic-sponsored legislation? And what have been your greatest successes in this area?
Well, I've been very fortunate because when I came into the legislature, I made sure that we formed coalitions and built coalitions on issues with different other legislators who were in other parties or who were in my party. So we looked at the issue rather than just looking at waiting until a bill came up and trying to get some support. So we connected that way from the very beginning. I had worked from Shirley Chisholm before when she was out of course, but building the National Political Congress of Women. I was her secretary for 11 years. And I had an opportunity to talk with people who were elected all over this nation to different offices. So I built coalitions with them on issues as well. And that way I was able to go over and get votes And that's how I passed so much legislation, maybe more legislation than any other Democrat in the legislature in history.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you can prove, I can prove it. So all they have to do is go and look my record up. Go to archives if they don't, if they want to challenge it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Candidate Jones, given that you would be new to the seat should you win this election, what will you do to make sure that Democratic positions, Democratic proposed legislation is successful on the floor?
So I think that that is probably one of the areas that my background as an attorney will serve as a strong suit. I am not afraid of adversity. I am not afraid of folks having differences of opinions than mine, but my whole job, my sole goal is to be able to sway people and get people who are staunchly against what my position is to change their mind and do what I am asking them to do. I'm very good at what I do. Additionally, I think that the benefit of having lived all over the country as a military brat and all over the world gives me a bit of a different perspective and worldview on what it means to really compromise with folks, to recognize and acknowledge people's differences of opinion and having a respectful demeanor when you approach people, letting them know that their voice has been heard, that you are open to their ideas, but while also making sure that they are clearly aware of what you are trying to accomplish and why will definitely be beneficial to me in this position. I'm very good at working with people who have differences of opinion.
Thank you. Candidate Gilliam, same question.
Okay.
Should you be successful in this election, how will you make sure that Democratic issues, Democratic proposed legislation is successful on the floor?
Okay, my distillate has been my ability to communicate effectively. I have had partnerships for the past 40 years with local nonprofits, with governmental entities, with community stakeholders, and I've had to have these relationships so that I could be successful in my mission to assist these young people that are in my program. And I've worked with both Democrats and Republicans in finding resources for the young people that I work with. So I don't have any hesitancy about my ability to be able to do that.
Thank you. Candidate Glanton, new question. Have you ever attended a legislative session? And if so, how involved did you get with that session?
Thank you for the question. I was so ready to answer the other question. And I'm also, I just want to state this for the record. Under no circumstances, by my experience as a Black man in America, would I ever waver on getting gun control in the state of Georgia. I just wanted to state that as a record. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that was even a better question that you asked. My father is currently in the General Assembly. He's been in there for 16 years. So I've spent a lot of time in the legislature. I remember just going back and forth between the House and the Senate chambers and just taking notes every day because I had to stay abreast of legislation because I was my father's intern. And I even influenced several pieces of legislation, especially when I was a PTA president. When my oldest daughter was 8 years old, I had influenced legislation that helped create more financial opportunities for students in the pre-K program. At the time, the Georgia Lottery was funding the program and they weren't able to solicit funds outside of that, the funds that were allocated for them. But clearly we know if you've gone to a school lately that kids need more resources. Our children, we need equity. So we need more resources than what's just allocated sometimes. So I wanted to ensure that we had the equity that we needed on our side of town to efficiently get our kids in the best possible position. So to answer that question, I've attended a lot of legislative sessions. I'm very abreast with it, so I won't get lost the first day. I'll make sure I know where I'm going. And I have relationships that we are going to nurture and build on even more.
Thank you. Candidate Gilliam, same question.
How would I work with the legislature?
Have you ever attended a legislative session? And if so, how involved did you get?
Very involved. As the education chair for the Atlanta NAACP, when the state was talking about taking over low performing schools. We got involved very to a great depth in that. So we also came up with a position paper that we sent to all of the state legislators regarding our views on how to enhance and impact education in the state of Georgia. And to say that we helped to defeat the takeover of the school systems in lower performing schools. So we got very involved.
Thank you. Candidate Jones, same question.
So yes, I have. First, as a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we often do participate in Delta Days at the Capitol at both the state and the national level. Additionally, I have had the opportunity as an executive board member for the National Black Law Students Association to write amicus briefs and to co-author amicus briefs to help and assist in having different legislation passed. I will also note that I think legislative sessions at the local level are very important as well. I'm very active in going and attending city council and board of commissioner meetings in our area to ensure that the legislation that they are passing at a local level is also reflective of what the residents of their community want. For instance, they keep continuously trying to add additional warehouses to our community. I've spent 2 years going to every meeting, standing up, speaking, addressing the city council and ensuring that they listened to the voice of the people and did not authorize those additional warehouses to come to our area. And so I would definitely continue that passionate charge to make sure that the citizens' voices are heard.
Thank you. Senator James, in your 20-some years of service, what legislation are you most proud of?
So many pieces, but I guess I'll start with human trafficking, in that I was probably the first piece of legislation on sex trafficking, where it made it a felony to pimp or pander young people who were 18 and to 25. And it made it a felony because at one time it was like a revolving door. These young people would be the ones arrested when they were the victims. And those who were the pimps and panderers did not have to really serve any time. They pay a fine and go back and get some more people and put them out on the street. So we had to start somewhere. So we strengthened the laws here in Georgia, and those laws passed in other states, the same law that I was able to draw up. And so we started there, and then also I'm continuing every year to strengthen it even more because Georgia is still #1 in sex trafficking. I'm also very proud of the safety laws that we were able to pass because, of course, my very first year in the Senate, my second son that was a senior at Westlake High School was killed by a drunk driver on Camp Creek and Butler, a few blocks from my house and a couple of miles from the school. And the drunk driver had 5 DUIs. So I dedicated my time, all this time, to not, since I couldn't bring Carrie back, to saving lives on the road and strengthening those DUI laws, because we had the weakest in the nation, but now we have some of the toughest, and we're still losing our loved ones. But we added distracted driving, texting and driving, and all to the bill that I originally put in honor of the memory of Carrie Allen James. So that was another one. And then, of course, I'm very, very happy about the alternative school programs that I was able to introduce, because at one time we had, my fan is already up.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, but
Okay.
I did create alternative schools in the state of Georgia.
Thank you. I'll ask this next question for you as well. What are the current boundaries of Senate District 35, and how has redistricting affected this district?
Well, redistricting did affect this district, but in the years that I've served, every time they have a reapportionment, they change the laws. So it was nothing I wasn't expecting, but our boundaries are, I'll say, from a part of Union City, Fairburn, no more Palmetto anymore, part of Chattahoochee Hills. I've seen some of my opponent signs in other places that are not in our district. And then most of the city of South Fulton, I'll say about 78% is in the 35th Senate District. And then, of course, there's Douglas County. And so we have Douglas County and Lithia Springs, Douglasville, the city, and none of Villa Rica is in it. So, and Mirror Lake is not in it. So the lines changed a little. We don't have any Cobb County in it anymore. So I saw signs up in Winston, Georgia, and I shouldn't tell my opponents that we don't have Winston, Georgia anymore, but we do not. So they're eating my signs up everywhere, but I have none up there because we have no district, no precincts in that area.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Candidate Jones, we'll start with you for this next question because you mentioned warehouses and municipalities. Which city is your home? And what measures would you take to make sure all the municipalities in your district are represented properly, especially when on matters in which the municipalities don't agree? Does that make sense?
It's a compound question, but yes, it's fine. So I actually currently reside in Douglasville, in Douglas County. I am actually right on the line of City of South Fulton and Douglas County. So I shop and traverse both areas quite frequently. I think that when you're dealing with two municipalities that don't necessarily agree, it's almost like how you deal when you have multiple children. I have two children. They do not always see eye to eye. There's quite often times where you need to broker agreements between the two of them. Somebody's not always going to be happy, but I think that if you are reasonable in the decisions that you make, I think that if you try to effectuate the most fairness in the decisions that you make, and if you are open, honest, and transparent with why and how you came to the decision that you make, oftentimes, even when people do not agree, they can respect and live with the decision. And so making sure that I'm consistently doing those things to make sure that all voices get heard, I think it will all come out in the wash, just like it does with your children. Nobody feels more loved than the other one.
Thank you. Candidate Glanton, same question. Which city is your home, and what measures will you take to make sure that all those cities are properly represented, especially in areas where they disagree?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, I live in the beautiful city of South Fulton. I live close enough to where I would consider myself somewhere between 21 minutes between certain destinations in terms of I move around a lot. So I've been timing myself. So I do live in the city of South Fulton. That's question one. Question two is, the good thing about it, I already have relationships in all of the city councils within the cities that are in District 35. And so first I would start to build more onto those relationships. And then I would start to find common goals and common issues that we are all, needing, and things that we need help with from a regional perspective, because I understand that we can't grow individually. And so I would be the person that would be, first of all, trying to unite the councils within, and then actually bringing consensus between the councils and everybody that borders each other to where we can start having these annual meetings, because these lines are invisible. So we can't say that one side of town or one city is dealing with something that more than the other city is. But we do know that city of South Fulton and the South Fulton cities are dealing with a healthcare situation and not a healthcare facility, opposed to Douglas County having a healthcare facility. So I think it's important to be knowledgeable about the district, knowledgeable about where you are, and where the district lines are. So I think that we have a very transient district, so we can put signs in a lot of different places. We're just trying to make sure we get the information to the people.
Thank you. Senator James, same question with a different take though. Which city is your home, and what measures have you taken to make sure that all of the cities in the district are properly represented?
I, as a Grady baby, born and raised in the Atlanta area, and lived in the Southwest Atlanta and South Fulton area my entire life. Even when I first got married at age 18, I continued to stay here. So I live in the city of South Fulton. Before my late husband passed away, we were tired of our tax dollars going to North Fulton and us not being able to have any say-so in many of the issues that were going on in the South Fulton unincorporated area. So that's when I got involved, and we both wrote up legislation to start the city of South Fulton. So I live in the city, work, play, raise my children, been PTA president at an elementary and a high school twice at Westlake. And, you know, I continue to spend my money here in this district. And I want to make sure that we do everything to make this a good, strong city and whole 35th district, and work with all of the other cities in the city in South Fulton, as well as in Douglas County, because it's strength in numbers. And we all have to look at it and have a regional plan, a comprehensive plan that we can agree on. So I'm proud to be a citizen here in the city of South Fulton, homeowner I've had 6 houses in this area. I still have 2 pieces of property. And my husband, my late husband, had other businesses in this area. And so, of course, I inherited them and shared them with my son, who lives in Douglas County, Douglasville. So it's part of the 35th Senate District as well. He lives there with his wife and 2 children who attend Douglas County schools. I think I may have answered it. Some a little of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Gilliam, same question. What city is your home? And what measures will you take to make sure that all of the cities in the district are properly represented, especially in areas where they disagree?
Okay, you went out for a second. What did you say, the last sentence?
What measures will you take to make sure that all of those cities are properly represented, especially in areas where they disagree?
Okay, I live in the city of South Fulton, and I have lived in this area for 33 years. And I tend to get along well with most folks, and I can anticipate working well with politicians in the various areas. However, I want voters to know that they have to hold all of us accountable. I talked to a constituent and she said she doesn't want to live in Amazon, Georgia. You know, she's tired of the warehouses, and I understand that. But I asked her, you know, how many zoning meetings have you attended? You know, you just can't put politicians in place and then just leave them there and think that each and every one is going to serve your best interest. So even while working with people in other cities, politicians in other cities, I want to make sure that our constituents, that they are able to advocate for themselves and communicate, and we can help to educate, ACE in other words, so that they will be in charge of the destinies of our cities and not just put it in the hands of elected officials. And I say to them, you know, even if you decide to elect me, hold me accountable. If that's not what you want for our district, then you have to be vocal, but you always have to show up. And as you know, we had mentioned in prior forums that the city of South Fulton will not have an emergency room, hospital, or surrounding areas. And people were just outraged, talking about, how did you all let that happen? I said, you need to ask, how do we let anything happen is you don't show up when it's time to speak up for those things. But the people have to hold elected folks accountable. And I will be an advocate for the people, but they also have to step up as well.
Thank you. And candidate
Do I
Gilliam.
get a rebuttal? Do I get a rebuttal? Since I'm the only person that she could have been talking about.
I didn't recognize her speaking of you.
No,
Thank
I
you.
was not. I was talking about accountability, period.
Because
Thank you.
I know
Thank
that
you,
I'm
thank you, thank
always
you.
accountable. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you
Thank
both.
Mhm.
Candidate Gilliam, we'll stick with you. There's a mental health related bill that does not allow pictures to be taken in public mental facilities. Given the consistent news reports about bad things happening in these facilities, do you think this is a good bill? If so, why? And if not, what revisions would you suggest?
Well, we have to be very careful about publicizing people that are ill. But I think there are other ways to get the information rather than, you don't want to exploit people who are already having challenges. And I have not seen that bill, so I cannot speak on it in depth. But no, I am not in support of just, walking into a facility and starting to take pictures or videoing patients that are not well. There are other ways that you can, get the information you need through research and investigative reporting.
Thank you. Candidate Glanton, same question.
Okay, so I am for understanding. I'm not as familiar with that bill either, but from experience from having people in those institutions, we understand the rights of privacy. That's really, really big. And so, but if there's a situation where there's some type of investigation or somebody, that needs help, then I think that we should have the necessary documentation to be able to get the accurate within the solution or the outcome of that individualized situation. But I don't think that, people should be allowed to just start filming people all in, different situations. People have privacy. And, that's not, from my opinion, that's not something that's going to necessarily help everybody's case by just, and I don't know the totalities of how a camera would go in there, if they would go in there swinging it and looking at everybody, or if they would just go in there specifically for that thing under that investigation. So I just want to get down to the facts and make sure that we're protecting our citizens inside of these institutions, because these are state institutions.
Thank you. Senator James, same question.
Yes, I've been honored to be the only that was assigned to the governor's. I signed a contract 2 years ago to serve, and I was glad to be on there because I was assigned to adolescents and youth. And my mother was, for 38 years in Atlanta Public School before she became a principal, was with special education children. And I got to go there with her sometime and be around them and know their needs. So, it's a lot of things that can, that bill does other than just allows you to take pictures. And I think that was a privacy thing that they do, but they do still have monitors in most of those classes. We've done things when we found out that some children were being restrained in while they're in school, like they were in a straitjacket or something. We made sure that we went, and I even went to the courts on them, so that they did stop it. And this is something, so sometimes when you can't even pass the legislation to do something, you have to go a step further. But we have to protect our mentally challenged youth and adults who are here in the state of Georgia. And this year we had the strongest bill that came from that mental health commission that I've had the honor of serving on. We had the strongest one that they've had in history because it gives money to certain areas of mental health care and screening and other things. It's a very comprehensive bill. Take too long to tell you all about it, but it is one of the few bills that I say bravo to the General Assembly for passing in this 2022 session.
Thank you.
You're
Candidate
welcome.
Jones, same question.
Yes, I would just add that I definitely agree that there needs to be opportunities, and there are appropriate times where you will need to photograph somebody in a mental health institution. I have done investigations for a number of universities, and I understand that there's often times where sometimes your photographic evidence is the best evidence that you may have for what is going on in that facility. And is not just for the benefit of the patient sometimes, but also for the staff members who may need to document what is also happening or being done to them. And so for that reason, I would support it. I would just add the caveat that even with people are struggling with mental health, they still deserve respect and dignity. And so we want to make sure that we're being respectful and not photographing people in compromising positions and things like that. But as a whole, I do think that it's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Gilliam, we'll start again with you with this next question. How do we get Medicaid expansion passed in this majority Republican state?
Well, and that is a challenge, but we have to make sure that constituents who have been speaking out against their own best interests, a lot of Republicans in rural areas who were screaming about not wanting Obamacare, but then when you rename it the Affordable Care Act, then they're signing up. But we have to educate people and let them know that this is in their best interest, and put it in such a way that, you know, it's understandable and it's not something that is political, that everyone deserves health care, just as all of our children deserve to have excellent schools. So that's what I would definitely do. I would go in and educate, and so that it would not be something that, you know, is put in a political stance.
Thank you. Senator James, same question. How do we get Medicaid expansion passed in this majority Republican state?
Well, we have been trying for 20 years to get Medicaid expansion. And it is, even when we were in control, meaning our parties were in the majority, there were so many people against receiving the money. But it's our tax dollars. They go into this system. And when our governors refuse to take this Medicaid, Medicare extension, then that money goes back in the general budget. So it's our tax dollars going back into the general budget rather than coming here to help the many that need it. So I've told you I'm a chairperson of a major committee. I've had 2 hearings on this in the past, and we had people from both sides to come. We've talked about it. And every year we chip away a little bit more at possibly getting this bill passed so that we can get our fair share of our tax dollars that go into the system. And it's so much needed here in the state of Georgia. After having COVID for 6 months last year in 21, I saw people dying all around me, and many of them didn't have any insurance. They were in hallways in these major hospitals that I was in. So I know the need is so great. And I hope that we will this year if we get a new governor, then who knows what can happen and what can change. But in the meantime, we're going to keep on having hearings and let everybody talk about it, because it is each time we get more and more support toward moving forward. And it's all about communication. It's all about building your coalitions and sticking with them and being honest, fair, and truthful.
Thank you. Candidate Glanton, how do we address the healthcare facility shortage south of I-20 in Fulton County?
Okay, thank you. That's kind of the same question that, that I was, y'all keep switching it up on me. So one of the things that I'm understanding is that narratives are extremely important. And there are so many different things that we have to do on the healthcare front in the state of Georgia. One being, we got to start getting people elected in these rural areas so that we can get control of the legislature. That's number one. But for what we have to do now, I can recall talking to a constituent and him telling me that he was, I guess, one of the people that was signing people up for Obamacare or Affordable Care Act. And he's saying that he was talking to this guy. And he was like, man, my son is about to die. He really needs this. He really needs this insurance, and he really needs that, and it'll help him out a lot. And then when the guy identified it as, he said he was a guy identified as Affordable Care Act, but he said he heard some lady in the background, I guess his wife, saying, hey, that ain't nothing but Obamacare. And you know what the man said? He said, well, he'll die before he gets on Obamacare. So what we have to do is we have to find common understanding of health is everybody's issue, and especially south of I-20, especially south of us. So the first thing we have to do, we have to go down there with the bipartisan approach in connecting the common understanding of health. And we've all gone through a pandemic. We lost people on the Republican side and the Democratic side. People lost family members. So that's the most important understanding of this situation. And so with South Fulton having a healthcare facility, first we have to identify a certificate of need. We've already done that. We're going to take care of that. That's one of the things that we're going to be trying to push for. Second, we need to identify land that we could actually start to try to build on for a healthcare facility. Then we need to go back to pushing Medicaid expansion to ensure that we are getting those federal dollars that will help us in the South Fulton County area. So it's going to take like I said, it's a very broad approach. But one of the first things I would do is, like I said, certificate of need is what we need. And then the understanding and knowing that whatever we can do to try to save parts of whatever East Point is doing in Atlanta Medical Center there, and try to ensure the people of South Fulton that you don't have to worry. This is not an issue that we're not thinking about in terms of our health. You know, you may lose your leg depending on the zip code. So that's not fair. We're paying good tax dollars over there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Glenn. And please, yes, thank you. And please know, we're not intentionally trying to trick anybody up. We're trying to cover the broadest number of topics in the smallest amount of time with 4 candidates.
I know I'm the only man on the entire call, so I know that's not it.
Okay. Candidate Jones, same question. How do we address the healthcare facility shortage south of I-20 in Fulton County?
I think we have to look at healthcare from a holistic point of view. A hospital is not the only way that you can get healthcare. It is unfortunate that the hospital that South Fulton has closed, and I definitely think we need to fight tooth and nail to get that back. But in the meantime, the people here need a solution. They need somewhere to go and somewhere to get service. We need to start looking for contracts from companies and healthcare organizations to bring urgent care facilities here. We need to make sure that we are making this a palatable place that doctors, nurses, LP, and CNAs want to live, so that they will be willing to work within the communities that they live in, so that if we are able to get an urgent care facility or a primary care facility, some smaller offshoot of a hospital, that we actually have licensed individuals here that are able to service people. The biggest issue that I have is Georgia is one of the worst states for maternal and fetal mortality. And we have got to give women other options, other opportunities, and other solutions. I think that access to healthcare also includes prenatal care, making sure that we have laws that reflect the use of midwives that are willing to travel to people's homes, individuals who cannot get to where they need to go or may not be able to get prenatal care from a hospital or a healthcare clinic, making sure that they have access to those types of things, in addition to making sure that we have transportation services in the meantime to ensure that individuals can get from the city of South Fulton to be serviced at appropriate healthcare facilities until we fix this problem. So it can't be an all or nothing solution. We have to attack and address what we can immediately so that we can triage this situation and make sure that everyone is cared for until we can get a hospital back in this area.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are closely approaching time for us to move on to the next group. And so I will ask you all to next do your 2-minute closing. And the order we will go in, I'm sure you may have heard me in the past say ladies first, but in light of what I was just accused of, we're going to do male first. And then we're going to go in the order that you guys are on my screen. So it's candidate Glanton, candidate Gilliam, candidate Jones, and we'll end with Senator James. 2-minute closing.
It wasn't it was a little inside thing with the other candidates. I was just teasing them. Besides, I'm raising 2 daughters and a granddaughter. So first of all, I want to thank the South Metro Democratic Women's Council for this opportunity. I'm thankful. This is probably the last forum that we'll be doing, so I'm thankful for the opportunity of y'all allowing us to get it out. I just understand that, you know, this is unprecedented times that we're in right now, and it's very polarizing and it's very important. And it's important for us to be able to have people on the ground to understand the issues on a totality. The world changes very fast, and we have to ensure that we are structuring it for us to be able to compete in not only just the region, but the world. And we have some of the brightest children that the world has to offer. And so we have to ensure that education is structured better for them to ensure we're not cheating them. You know, we always hear that our parents try to give us more than what they had. And so we're trying to give the next generation more than what we had. And it's my obligation and duty for the testimony of my life that God has given me, for me to continue to stand in the gap, to push the issues that create better opportunities and better resources and equity for us in District 35 and everywhere in the state of Georgia. So I humbly ask for, you know, your consideration and then your vote. 5 days away from this election, get out there and vote. So if you're not going to go vote for me, please exercise your right to vote. And I'm thankful for these other ladies and these candidates because we've raised the voter turnout in this race. I really believe that. And that's ultimately the objective. So I'm just so thankful that people are, you know, courageous and care about their community. So I look forward to working with these ladies after the election. And I guarantee they will have a spot in my administration. Thank y'all.
Candidate Gilliam.
Well, again, thank you all for having me as well. I'm excited about the possibilities for our district coming up. As I mentioned, for 32 years, I have worked in the community addressing the critical needs of young people who are disconnected. And what I say and what I use is that if it's not good enough for my daughter, it's not good enough for any young person that we come in contact with. And I raised a daughter. I heard, Whitney and Senator James talk about their children. I have a 35-year-old daughter that I raised as a single mom. She went to Creekside High School, and the school had challenges then. And I was there fighting for education equity, education equality, because I wanted our children, all of our children, to just do well, to excel. When some of the mothers in my community had, jobs, and when I would come home from work, I would let them come into my home. I would feed them, help them with their homework, and make sure that all they had to do was take a bath and go to bed once their parents came home. If you were to go to my website, there are so many testimonials of young people that I have impacted their lives. And I want to do the same thing for this district. Two of my neighbors were just killed in a car accident. You guys probably saw it on the news. It was at the corner of Bethsaida and 138. We've been begging for a traffic light at that intersection. Infrastructure. We're begging for sidewalks, for lights, and there are other communities that have their golf cart lanes and bike lanes, and we're just asking for quality of life in this district. And I'm tired of us begging for the things that we deserve. I am not afraid to fight. I have been a social justice warrior all of my life, and I am ready to bring the change that's needed in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Jones.
Yes, again, I just want to close by saying thank you all for having us on today and given us an opportunity to have our platforms be heard by the voters. They can find out more information about me at whitneykennerjones.com. I hope at the end of this forum that individuals who have watched and will tune in later see that I am passionate about this community. I love it here. My children are here. I have built my forever home here. I'm not going anywhere. And I want to make sure that my community reflects exactly what I know the people in my community deserve. I'm a candidate that believes in access, in equity, and in inclusion. I think when we are all working together towards the same or similar goals, that we all benefit and that we all do better. I'm committed to fighting to making sure that District 35 gets its fair share of all allocable resources in this area. ensuring that we have top-notch education in this area, making sure that we have top-notch healthcare in this area, making sure that our tax dollars are being allocated to things that push our district and the state of Georgia forward. I'm committed to the long fight. I'm not easily swayed. I'm going to be here down on the mat and on the carpet with whomever I need to be to make sure that we get what we are supposed to have. And so I do ask you for your vote today. Early voting ends tomorrow. Election day, of course, is on May 24th. Again, you can follow us at Whitney Kenner Jones for Georgia on Instagram, and you can see all of the community member endorsements that we've gotten on there, because I truly am committed to being a force in my community, making sure that everyone's voices are being heard and making sure that we're moving Georgia forward. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Jones. Senator James.
Thank you. You know, according to Proverbs 29:18, it says, where there's no vision, the people perish. So I came into this office with a vision to make sure that we invested in our community, that we built a better and stronger community, that we attracted quality industry, but not warehousing. And those people who would halt to have our undeveloped land to be quality homes as beautiful as the ones we had, or even better. And that has happened during my tenure. I've been proactive. We are all working already to get bonding for the CON that we already have in existence. And we're trying to make sure that since it's still alive, that it can be used in South Fulton so that we can get a hospital. I'm tired of the deaths on South Fulton Parkway and the crashes twice in the past 2 weeks to see what we could do to make sure that those 40 and 50 18-wheelers that are trying to turn in to the new facility, that they are not obstructing traffic and causing even more accidents. And so we're working with DOT to get a strong plan. I'm working to make sure we get the proper lights. Nobody ever asked me about, I can't be all over everywhere, but anything that my community asks for, then we work for it. I want to fully fund public education. I want to give teachers the pay raise that they deserve. That was the first bill that I put in to make the teachers' salaries go up to the national paying our teachers 49. And so we came up to the national average, and I know that it's time to end. So thank you, Metropolitan South Metro Democratic Women. You rock.
Thank you, Senator James. And thank you to every candidate here in the Senate District 35 race. We appreciate your earnestness and the thoughtfulness of your responses tonight. Thank you for taking the time tonight to make sure that voters had, another opportunity to learn more about you and make an informed decision when they go to the polls.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
We will now pivot to Senate District 38. And I have the pleasure of introducing the moderator for this next half of our event this evening, Dr. Michaela Ingram. So Dr. Ingram is a digital learning strategist, business owner, and community activist who studies the impact of technology on society, in particular, older adult African Americans and underrepresented populations. As a digital learning strategist, she helps institutions of higher education and professional organizations manage, design, and implement online learning products that are inclusive and accessible. She owns a real estate investment business and as an interactive media company. While living in Portland, Oregon, she co-formed a grassroots organization focused on the visibility, rights, and safety of LGBTQ, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. She continues to do this type of work here in Atlanta. Michaela was born and raised in the city of South Fulton. She received her Bachelor's of Art degree from Spelman College, her Master's from The Ohio State University, and her Doctor of Science from the University of Baltimore. When not working or organizing communities, she can be found forest bathing in the North Georgia mountains. Everyone, please welcome Michaela, Dr. Michaela Ingram.
Thank you, Elise, and it's pronounced Malika for those on the call. So hi, everyone, and thanks for that introduction. And candidates, thanks for joining us this evening. This forum represents an opportunity for community members to meet you and hear your plans for the district and why they should or should not support you. Before we get started with the discussion and my questions, I'd like to start off by having each candidate introduce themselves. We will go in alphabetical order, starting with candidate Bray, and then going to candidate Carson, and ending with candidate Petty.
Sure, thank you so much, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. At this level on the ballot, it's just so important to have an opportunity to actually connect with folks and tell them who I am. So my name is Melody Bray, and I am running for Georgia State Senate District 38. I'm a first-generation immigrant. I've been living in and loving the Metro Atlanta area for give or take 18 years or so now. I run my own real estate company, but I'm also an attorney who's worked in the government sector, handling all types of cases, civil court, everything from divorce and custody disputes, adoptions, car accidents. On the criminal side, all of your felony cases, death penalty cases. I worked with my judge for several years on that. And it allowed me to see just how systems that we have set up work for some while they do not work for others. I also worked in the Fulton County Law Department defending our emergency services personnel. And I worked as an education law attorney. I've represented Fulton County schools, Atlanta Public Schools, DeKalb County schools as well. Most recently, I co-founded the Georgia 55 Project, which is a voter outreach and education group that in the last election cycle became one of the largest grassroots get out the vote organizations in Atlanta, serving every majority minority precinct in the city. And we're in such an incredible, important time in the history of our city and our state, really the whole nation. Our schools are under attack, housing's increasingly unaffordable. We have forces that are trying to deny us our healthcare and bodily autonomy. And yet we have an absentee senator that is not advocating for us. So I'm running for Senate because at such an important time, every single seat at the Capitol has to have a true advocate that's actively pushing us to become the type of Georgia, the type of Atlanta, the type of city of South Fulton that we truly want to be. I'm committed to do just that. I hope I can earn your vote this evening. You can head to brayforgasenate.com for more info if you're not able to stay on for the full discussion this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidate Bray. 1 second, let me just interject here. So I need to remind everyone that each candidate has 2 minutes to answer the questions, and then each candidate has a rebuttal shall be 2 minutes. And then at the end of the session, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. So when your 2 minutes has expired, someone will hold up a fan to let you know that your time has come to an end. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with another forum with Melody and with Adam. And my name is Michael Carson. I am the oldest son of 2 teen parents who have now, made their transition. At the age of 7, my parents were what we call essential workers now, and they had to basically work so that I could stay at home and be a babysitter at 7 years old, my 2 sisters. One particular night, our apartment caught fire, and I had to make a decision as a 7-year-old to protect myself and protect my sisters. And I made what I thought was the best decision, and it was at the time for us to be rescued by a fire department. And I believe it was from that time, from 7 years old, serving my family, then going on to serve the military, serving my community as a founder of a nonprofit that helped to that work with marginalized communities to address food deserts and the like, to serving in nonprofits and even in my legal profession as a paralegal. I've been a paralegal now for 35 years. I believe it was through that, at that time, at 7 years old, that I was catapulted for a career of service. And I've always used the opportunity to serve others and to make sure that I was able to get them from point A to point B. District 38 is no longer in need of a career politician, but someone who will be visible and viable in the community, to make sure that the resources that we need in our community, to make sure that our voices are heard, and to make sure that when people live in the community and see their state representative or their state senator, they don't think it's someone who's actually from another district. So I'm running to be your next state senator, and I hope that after tonight that I could gain your vote. If you have not already voted, early voting ends tomorrow. Voting is on Tuesday. For more information about my campaign, you can go to carsonforsenate.com. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Good evening to you all. Ms. Jenkins, I love that fan. I'm a fan of voting as well. I just want to thank the South Metro Democratic Women's Council for having this forum tonight. It's really a pleasure to be with you all and the other candidates. Good evening to you all. My name is Adam Petty. As my screen name says, I'm a husband. I'm an attorney by trade. I am a service member and also a small business owner. And very quickly about me, my father passed when I was 7 years old, and that forced my mother to raise my older sister and I by herself. And she did the very best that she could. And I like to think she did a great job. But from that, I learned so many lessons about life, dealing with challenges along the way and how you need to respond to those challenges. My mother taught me so many lessons, two of which I'll share with you all. One is to always treat others how you want to be treated, and the other is to always be of service to others. And I've taken those tidbits from my mother and I've used them in my adult life. As I mentioned, am a veteran. I've served 6.5 years on active duty in the Army. I deployed to Afghanistan. I'm currently in the reserve still now. I'm a field grade officer in the reserve component. I am an attorney, and I became an attorney after a career doing computer programming in the banking industry. And I decided I needed to do something more. I needed to do something to be able to impact people's lives. And I felt that being an attorney and using the practice of law gave me the opportunity to do that. And it has. In the Army, I was a prosecutor. I'm a judge advocate. And I was a prosecutor. I was a defense attorney. I was a magistrate in the Army. In the civilian sector, my real life, when I got off active duty, I worked at the Fulton County DA's office, and I prosecuted cases for 2.5 years with a specialty in criminal street gangs. I prosecuted all of the felonies from murder all the way down to just simple drug transactions. That gave me a unique, I think, perspective of the criminal justice system, gave me a unique perspective in terms of public safety and how we go about policing our communities. Now, I am a defense attorney, and I do that. Just the same work on the other side of the table now, representing individuals who are kind of at the most desperate part of their lives, who need to be able to have someone who's going to speak up and vote, or speak up and represent them. And that, I believe, kind of transitions to this particular campaign. I'm looking to earn the votes of the constituents of District 38 because they need a leader. They need someone who's been a leader, who's going to continue to lead, and will be exactly the voice that they need at the podium, in the well, in the state Senate, and also in the community, both Fulton and Cobb counties. And I believe I'm uniquely positioned to be able to do that with my trial practice, my ability to speak and give. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. I just want to thank you all for your time. I'll wrap it up, just say thank you. I look forward to this discussion this evening.
Okay, thank you all for the introductions. I'd like to know what is the boundary for your district and how much of the boundary is in the old district? Let's start with candidate Carson.
With respect to the city of South Fulton, is that what you were referring to, or just the entire district?
The entire district. Yes.
Oh, okay. The city of South Fulton is districts 1 and 2. You have Metro Atlanta, Adamsville, Collier Heights, some of Old Bankhead, South Cobb, Mapleton, Smyrna, and a portion of Vinings.
All right. So I've read about your top issues and priorities that you hope to address. Will each of you please list and describe the tangible activities mapped to these items that you've highlighted on your websites? Start with candidate Brave.
Sure. So one of my top priorities is affordable housing. I've done affordable housing advocacy on the city level in the past. And I'm also a real estate agent, as I mentioned. We have a supply issue and we also have a density issue throughout the city. So first of all, as far as supply, we need to use, the government has a ton of land. We need to utilize that land for affordable housing to increase supply, which naturally reduces prices. And then we also have a density issue. A lot of this happens at the city level and we don't have as much power on the state level with it, but we can certainly help explaining to folks that having more dense housing doesn't mean that your property rates or your property is going to go down in value. It does mean that it's going to be more accessible. No one's complaining in Virginia Highlands that there's too many duplexes or quadruplexes and that all of their property prices are going down. It's a desirable area. So if we increase density, we can also reduce the price of our housing. And then the other two briefly in the time I have is healthcare, access to healthcare, Medicaid expansion. We might not be able to do it on a full level, but we can certainly do it for mothers for 2 years after their birth. And then thirdly, fully funding education and updating our education formula and specifically taking into account the effect of poverty on the ability of students to obtain their education.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to candidate Petty.
Thank you. One of my main platform issues is public safety. And I just spoke about being a prosecutor in Fulton County for 2.5 years. That is exactly what I did. I worked with all the law enforcement agencies in Fulton County, and I prosecuted gang cases. And I think that ultimately that was the work that I did. And I was chosen to be in that particular unit for a reason, because I was able to interact with our agencies. I was able to interact with the community. And I was able to also bring a real life and a real perspective to the cases. So public safety is of course, my bread and butter. I want to make sure our communities are safe. I want to make sure that when we go to a gas station, we park our car, that our car is still there. We come back from buying a soda. I want to make sure that we're able to be safe as we go about our lives in the South Metro area, in Atlanta and Cobb County, that we're able to just make sure that we have a safe place to be and that we can enjoy our lives the way that we should. I think that ultimately public safety is a much broader issue than just prosecuting cases. I think we need to address education. We need to address employment. We need to address affordable housing. We need to address living wages. You know, I think that all of these things kind of all tie together and can cause some of the offenders to do the things that they've done. So it's a more comprehensive answer than just public safety by itself. But some of those other issues, I believe, are very poignant, meaning being education, also being something I'm very passionate about, criminal justice reform as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Carson, please.
Thank you for the question. For me, criminal justice reform is where I've been doing a lot of my work over the years, and that's where I cut my teeth some 24 years ago. So for me, working with local municipalities to make sure that we can address, for instance, here in the city of South Fulton, there's a measure before us, 2 partner individuals who have marijuana, 1 ounce of marijuana cases. So working to make sure that we can bring our probation, those individuals that are on probation, make sure that we can bring those numbers down, because Georgia basically leads, some nations with respect to probation. I want us to get back to being using the criminal justice platform that former Governor Dill introduced and others, where he partnered with Democrats and community leaders to make sure that we address the needs that are important to our community and not just be about law and order. The other 2 things for me are to help cultivate economic development. I've been meeting with a number of community leaders and banks, bank officials and bank executives over the last few months to see how we can do that, not only in South Cobb, who desperately, the community desperately want their own community bank, that possibly a land bank or something that the citizens can themselves own, maybe as a credit union. So there's a lot of interest in that. And thirdly, quality healthcare, not just Medicaid expansion, but how do we make sure that we address the certificate of need issues that plagues our state. That there was a bill that was brought up the last session that was basically the healthcare industry balked at it and said that they wouldn't, that they would not support it, so it didn't go anywhere. So I'm really concerned about that, particularly for Fulton County, where a lot of our residents rely on Grady, and Grady's not the most convenient place.
Okay, thank you. The next question is in reference to the mental health bill that was recently signed, stating that pictures are not allowed to be taken in public mental health facilities. With all the news stories of bad things happening in these facilities, do you think this is a good bill? Why or why not? And how would you rewrite the bill? Let's start with candidate Petty.
Thank you for the question. I think that ultimately, as I can speak to, as it pertains even to just veterans, from my particular experience as a veteran, I think ultimately mental health is an area that does not get enough attention. I believe that the bill, as designed, can do better, or excuse me, as written, can do better. I think that ultimately what we need to do is we need to empower our medical providers. We need to make sure that they have the funding, that they have the equipment and the ability to accept healthcare from, or even patients that don't have healthcare. I think ultimately there needs to be provisions that expand the access of mental health care to patients and people that need it, know that they need it, and even to people who have been referred by family members. I don't know that the bill goes far enough in order to provide that sort of coverage and protection. I think that ultimately we need to address it by also talking about expanding Medicaid here within the state of Georgia, so that it's affordable healthcare and mental health care is affordable for everyone, every single citizen, not just citizens that are able to pay for healthcare themselves, but those that need some help from the state.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Bray.
Sure. So here's a reason why I think it's important to have more lawyers in the Senate. Right now, we maybe have 5 or 6. There's already a law on the books that allows for the filming of people with consent. And I'm assuming in this case, in the mental health bill, it would be the consent of the guardian of the person who's checked into the facility. So admittedly, I'm not familiar with that part of that mental health bill. It was a huge bill that passed, but it's very likely in conflict with existing a law that allows for consensual filming within a facility. So I would need to look at the bill more closely, but it's likely in conflict. And I would just say that this is why we need more attorneys in the Senate to speak to how laws interact with one another and making sure that we put out laws that actually make sense in the real world.
I too am not familiar with that provision of the bill. I don't, personally, I don't think the bill goes far enough. I think it's a good first step with respect to providing some relief for individuals with mental health challenges. A provision of the bill that I'm not particularly fond of is giving police officers the ability, to kind of determine, what state someone is in. They're supposed to use the help of a professional, but I don't know that will be monitored. So if the question is more about monitoring those that are supposed to be doing the right thing, then I think I would want to see again how that's written, but also better, make sure that those that are supposed to be doing what they're supposed to do, that they're not police, but that there are some guidelines in place to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. But the second part of that bill that I'm not a big fan of is that insurance companies don't necessarily have to cover it. Individuals who are, who may need that service. So I think again, this is a good first step, but I think we need to do more and we need to examine the bill more closely.
Okay. All right, this next question is around healthcare in the city of South Fulton. So as Elise introduced me as a native of the city of South Fulton, it was of course Atlanta then, Southwest Atlanta. There was a hospital, Holy Family Hospital there off of Fairburn Road. That hospital no longer exists. And having aging parents, the closest hospital that we can go to is Piedmont or in Douglasville. So tell me, what are your recommendations for addressing healthcare in the city of South Fulton? Let's start with candidate Carson.
As I mentioned earlier, I think one of the things we have to address is the certificate of need process, because they basically control who can do, the individuals who run that particular portion of our state government control where hospitals, where hospitals can be. So I think the important thing is to work with private practitioners. There are a number of private practitioners that are offering services, and then possibly even open up, more urgent cares. I know the Walmart over on Research that they're offering, that they will be offering some care for individuals who are needing health care. So I think we have to look at the certificate of need process as well as working with private doctors to see, private practice doctors, see if they can offer service, as well as working with facilities that offer urgent care for our citizens.
Candidate Bray.
So I agree with Mr. Carson about needing to make some progress on certificate of need laws, but this is something that has come up over and over again, and it's always kind of obstructed. So I think we also, as the minority party, need to kind of come up with practical solutions around it. So we need to look at health overall. Are we increasing access to good and healthy food? Will people even go to the doctor if they can't afford it? Do they have insurance to be able to access healthcare? What insurance options do they have? Are they making money at a job where they can deal with these copays? Healthcare is not just about a facility access, although that is incredibly important, but it's also about making sure that people can lead whole and healthy lives. So short of being able to just hit something straight on, like Mr. Carson suggests, I do think that there's a need to focus on all of these kind of downstream healthcare issues to put people in the best position to not have to utilize facilities as frequently.
Can I respond to that? May I respond to that?
Yes, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, so of course those other items are needed for, and this is the one caveat that I think people sometimes overlook when we talk about needs around healthcare and other needs. There are a number of citizens in the city of South Fulton that aren't what we call marginalized individuals, or they're not in marginalized communities. So I think we have to not only address individuals who maybe fit that description, but there are individuals who want other options with respect to healthcare. So I think it's not only just, of course, we need to look at the quality of life overall with respect to, as Mr. Petty said earlier about public safety, when we talk about healthcare, there's a number of factors that go into it. But I think we have to, there can be a both and. I wasn't inferring that it was just one only, but what you referenced the city of South Fulton. So there are a number of communities in the city of South Fulton that have individuals who they wouldn't fall under certain categories. So I just wanted to make that point clear with respect to what I was saying.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Petty, will you respond to the question?
Yes, thank you. So I think that both candidates have made some really, really great points. I think that we also need to examine alternate ways of providing healthcare. So for example, I know that, we're all aware, AMC down in East Point has decided to close. They shut down its emergency room. And I think that ultimately that was years in the making. I think that our elected officials should have been much more active and engaged in terms of doing what they could do to ensure that that hospital stayed open and kept its emergency room open for people in need. I think that ultimately some of the problems may have existed because of just transportation and the ability to get there. People in need of service who needed to get there were unable to get there, or people that actually needed to have services but did not have the healthcare, the required healthcare to be able to actually obtain those services. So we're talking about, one, increasing people's access to the healthcare system. And that can be done in so many different ways, some of which just takes getting investment, talking to the hospitals, finding out exactly what it would take to keep them there, to keep them open, and having a relationship with those partners. I think ultimately we can also talk about some options for like maybe even remote healthcare. So having continual care for some of maybe possibly very serious conditions where people may just need to have a checkup with the doctor and just talk about their conditions, see where they are, and make sure that their medication prescriptions are still being filled, to make sure that they have that regular contact where it doesn't necessarily require an in-person visit. We need to make sure that medical providers are given incentives to be able to do that and accept healthcare that provides for that in order to expand access and ease access for everyone.
Okay, thank you for those thorough answers to that question. Along these same lines, similar to healthcare, I'd like for us to focus on seniors, senior citizens, older adults. What will you do to stabilize resources for seniors in your district? How will you communicate the resources, savings, and future financial stability of seniors in your district? So, for example, prescriptions, safety, housing for seniors. Let's start with candidate Petty.
Hey, that's a great question. So my next door neighbor is 93 years old, and he's one of the healthiest 93-year-olds I've ever met. But I know not everybody's as blessed and fortunate as he is. He could probably out-golf me, actually. What I am doing currently with the fraternity that I belong to is I currently am the senior Kappa Affairs Committee Chairman. And what I do is I liaise on behalf of and with the seniors in my chapter. And I do that because I know that at some point when I become a senior, I want to have somebody looking after for me. And I think that ultimately the first thing we need to do is let them know that we see them and that we are thankful for them, and that we're going to make sure that they're safe and taken care of. And that comes in a variety of different ways. It comes in making sure that they can stay in their homes. When you're on a fixed income, like many seniors are, and our property taxes continue to rise as the cost of living continues to rise. I don't believe that their fixed income matches in terms of growth. So ultimately, we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to kind of push down some of those ancillary types of costs for our seniors. So I think that ultimately there can be subsidies that we give from the state to be able to direct towards seniors and make sure that they're able to stay in their homes, make sure they're able to repair their homes, making sure that we have, going back to the healthcare piece, that we have healthcare and cost of drugs, prescription medication that is affordable for our seniors. These things don't happen overnight, but they do take a first step. And I believe that we need to continue to focus on making sure we're addressing a more the totality of all the issues that kind of go into making sure that we're protecting our seniors. And then lastly, I think ultimately we just need to make sure that there is a communication between them and their legislator that's wide and that's open, so that when they do have concerns, they are having issues in their day-to-day lives, that they have a place where they can go, they can talk to, they can pass on those concerns, and have someone who's going to fight for them and be an advocate for them and their rights.
Okay, thank you. Let's go with candidate Carson.
Thank you for that question. Before our forum tonight, I was with a couple of seniors at another event, and we were talking about this very same thing. And one of the things that I propose to them that we do is to work collaboratively with not only as their state senator, but with their county commissioner, which a lot of the senior services, come through the county, as well as with the council persons. And even with, for in Atlanta, you have the NPUs, you have the HOAs and different ways to communicate that with them. But I think it's important that we work collaboratively and that we hold community meetings and all of us together, the state senators, state reps, the council persons, the commissioners, where we do that collaboratively so that we can help them get their questions answered. Because oftentimes I've found that people within the district don't know who's responsible for what. And they may have a question that's not necessarily tailored for the state senator or their state rep. It might be for their council person or their county commissioner. So I think it's important that we work collaboratively with our elected officials. I have a relationship currently with my council person and my commissioner and my state rep, as well as a number of seniors in the community. And oftentimes when we get together, where it's hiking or just have, like we had a meeting on Monday at one of the parks, and we just talked about things that are going on in their lives. I think those are the type of interactions that are important, but also have not only a website, but have a communication channel, again, through the collaboration, but also through those personal relationships of people that are directly connected to them. And I think it's possible. I mean, with the technology that we have now, there should be no reason why our seniors are not well informed, making sure their needs are addressed and taken care of. So that's a huge thing for me.
Okay. Thank you. And candidate Bray?
Yeah, so I also think that a collaboration between different levels of elected officials is necessary. And think good old fashioned mail. Particularly on the west side of Atlanta, when they were doing some tax incentives for legacy residents to allow them to remain in place, all of it was online. And so you had a number of seniors who weren't aware that they had access to freeze their property taxes. And we were like, you need to get a human being on the doorstep or get something in their mailbox, because not everybody can engage online. So good old fashioned mail of putting something in your mailbox on a quarterly basis that gives collaborative resources for folks. And then importantly, in light of the incumbent in this race, just picking up the dadgum phone when you call. When you call with an issue, being able to answer the phone. And even if I can't do that thing, it's not in my wheelhouse, to be able to say, oh, that's your county commissioner. Oh, that's your NPU president that you should be contacting about that. And here's their contact information, or heck, I'll connect the both of you. So two things, mail and also commitment to actually being in communication and pointing people in the right direction.
Okay. So as a follow-up question to that, you all spoke in general terms about seniors and providing services. What type of ideas do you have to ensure an access to quality care and services and housing? So for example, 55 and over communities developments within the city of South Fulton. Let's start with Brave.
So I did like the program that the city of Atlanta put out of freezing taxes for legacy residents, so that those who are on a fixed income know what's coming down the pike and can plan for it accordingly. I think that that's something that it would be difficult to do at the state level, but as a state representative, you can engage those who are on city and county levels and provide them with state resources to be able to get the word out. And make sure that those folks know that, hey, we're starting a new plan or a new policy. Here's how you would engage with that. but keeping people in place, a lot of that comes with taxes. And then secondly, making sure they can take care of where they are. So a number of seniors are in their home. It's the same home that their family has lived in for many, many years, but they're having difficulty keeping the home up and connecting them with nonprofit resources that already exist, but they might not know could be a resource to them to fix that leak in the roof, or repaint that porch or fix that rotting wood on their home. So connecting folks with resources as well as a property tax freeze.
Okay, Candidate Petty, will you answer the question?
So I think definitely we absolutely need to keep our seniors in their homes, many of which have been in their homes for generations. We have so many historic neighborhoods in South Fulton, in Atlanta, and throughout the rest of Fulton and Cobb counties. But I think what sometimes gets overlooked are some seniors who are renting their homes or in apartments that they do not actually own. And this is where sometimes we kind of lose sight of the fact that seniors too are also affected by the rising prices of rent. They're also affected by tenant evictions that we started to see over the past couple of years start to actually skyrocket. So ultimately, we also need to think about that population of seniors and what we can do to keep them in those homes they don't necessarily even own. So in doing that, I think sometimes we talk about incentivizing, keeping them in their homes, providing renters assurance or assistance, and giving landlords other opportunities or other ways that they can actually go about collecting from, if there's any past rent that's due. Giving landlords, incentives and options to make sure that they have some other funding to help subsidize when it's in need. Obviously, we can't pay for everyone's rent, right? We can't make sure that every single apartment that's past due just gets a check from the state. But what we can do is we can start programs, we can have communication, and we can offer assistance when it's needed. And I think ultimately that sometimes gets forgotten because we talk so much about mortgages, which also, of course, is a crisis, but we need to make sure that we're looking at all the ways that our seniors are housed, and that can be, owning a home or even renting a home.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Carson.
Thank you for the question. There are a number of things that are happening specifically in District 1 and District 2 in the city of South Fulton to assist seniors and to make sure seniors are notified. I don't mean to sound repetitive, but I think it's very, very important that we make sure that not that I want to hold my state rep accountable and in a negative way or hold the council person or the mayor accountable, but I think we need to make sure that we're working with them so that we're all, we all have the heartbeat of our seniors and have the heartbeat of our constituents, such that we too know what's going on, because we live in these communities. I'm surrounded by a number of seniors in my subdivision, so that if there is an issue, that we can make sure that their issues are being addressed and that the information is being disseminated. I think it's important that we look at the things that we can do as state senators with respect to monies coming into the state, and making sure that monies such as from the CARES Act or any leftover monies, any monies from the federal government that enter our state, make sure that they get to our respective counties so that they can do what they need to do, and then to make sure that there's some checks and balances to make sure that our seniors are being taken care of with respect to if it's around housing or whatever the issue around prescription drugs. So I think it's important that, again, we work collaboratively, because if it's just me going in the state house for 40 days and then I'm not seen for the other 300 and some odd days, what's the point? Then I'm not going to know, what's affecting my, the senior population in our district. So I think it's important to have that collaborative relationship, but also to make sure that everyone along that pipeline is doing what they can and what they're supposed to do to make sure our needs are addressed.
Okay, thank you. So each of you have education as one of your issues or platforms that you'd like to focus on. Please tell us more about your plans in this space. Let's start with candidate Carson.
I'm a product of public schools. I support funding public schools wholeheartedly. I work a lot and get a lot of advice from teachers, not only in Fulton County and administrators in Fulton County, but also those in Cobb County. If you look at my website, you'll see that the legislative priorities are based on those needs on some of the school boards and those respective counties. So I'm interested in making sure that public schools are funded. I'm interested in making sure that we have the resources necessary for instance, a cluster of the schools in Fulton County are Title I schools. So how do we make sure that that we not flood them with resource officers and things are counterproductive for the quality of their education, but make sure that they have the board and make sure the county is providing healthcare providers or mental health providers for children who might need them and for staff who might need them, making sure our teachers, the pay raise that they just recently received is great, but it's a start, making sure that our teachers, are paid well and that they have the resources they need. So my wife's an educator, so I hear it all the time, and I understand the need closely. So any way that I can support public education, I'm there, but I look toward the educators to tell me what they need. I don't propose to tell them what they need. I look to them, and I will be looking for their guidance to say, this is what we need, and this is how we need these things to get done. So I'm part of my initial 100-day plan is to work with our educators to make sure that I can adequately address their needs. That's under my purview.
Okay, thank you. Next, candidate Petty.
Thank you. So I absolutely agree. I think that we need to fully fund our schools like yesterday. I think that needs to be a priority. Our schools need to be empowered. I think that ultimately over the past couple of years, we have seen attacks on our school boards, on what's been able to be taught in our schools. And I think ultimately we need to empower them. We need to fund them. We need to make sure that our teachers are paid what they deserve. They have our children a lot of times more than the parents do in terms of hours out of the day. So I absolutely believe that they need to be paid for, and the staff and all of the other support staff who are actually working in the schools, be it cafeteria workers and janitors, bus drivers and the like. I also, in my spare time, one of the things I take the most pride and joy in is as I mentor. I'm down in Union City, and this particular youth mentor program, it is a pretrial diversion program. All of the young men, about 17 to 24 years old, or maybe even younger, either have criminal cases or are just coming out of a criminal case. And one of the things that I have learned working with them every single week is that these are smart kids. This next generation of students and young people are light years ahead of where my generation was, just in terms of their intellect and their keenness, but they're under challenged sometimes. And I think that ultimately, sometimes we try to push college prep, we try to push, go to college and get a degree, get a job, have a career. And that lineage sometimes doesn't reach these young men. These young men want other opportunities. So I think that we need to also do a focus on making sure that our schools are partnering with one another in order to provide students who might want an alternate education, maybe to go and learn a trade, become an HVAC technician or an airplane engine mechanic. These are some of the most desirable and highest paying jobs in the state. And we're not, I think the funding is there. The school, some of these programs are being offered at technical colleges for free. Our young people just don't know about it. They're not given the opportunity to take that track instead. So I think sometimes we need to also just kind of take a step back and assess each student and what their particular desires and what their interests are. And if we can do that, we can start to help kind of direct them towards some other options. That is a school board issue. I'm not an educator, never have been. I'm not smart enough to be an educator. I am smart enough to know that we need to work with our boards of education in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Bray.
Sure. So I agree with them both again on fully funding education and updating our funding formula that is as almost as old as I am. Secondly, so I was an education law attorney, as I mentioned at the top of our time together, and I did a lot of work in the special education area. I'm sitting in on IEP meetings, and we're severely under-resourced in special education. We have a lot of federal requirements, and no teacher or parapro is waking up in the morning saying, I just don't want to provide resources to these kids. They are not being put into a position where they can actually achieve success. We need to help them achieve that success. And then third, I would say board support, education board support. When I've spoken to our education boards within District 38 and asked them when the last time they spoke to their senator was, or when they've seen them at a meeting, the answer has always been a resounding, that's never. We've never seen her. Don't know. We're just kind of working with what we have. And so being sure that I'm present and letting them know they're not working in a silo, but that they do have state support. And then lastly, which is a little more complex than just a 2-year term, which a senator has, is creating vocational pipelines that are actually connected to our job growth down the line. So instead of just saying, hey, you can do these various vocational things, we can actually say, hey, in 10 years, the state of Georgia predicts we're going to need this list of employees. And so from that, we can work backward now in high school and say, here are the skills you would need to get to that point. So connecting jobs with our education system.
Okay, excellent. I'd like to switch over to economic development and have each of you describe what would you do to have facilitate a vibrant economic development in the communities that you will service. And let's start with candidate Petty.
I think one thing where I reside in the district is highly residential. And I think that there is a push to try and keep it that way. And I understand people want to protect the value of their homes, and they've been here for 20 and 30 years. However, I also believe in progress. I believe in growth. I think that we also need to talk about, I think, expanding what we use our neighborhoods for. I think that we need to bring, there is a little bit of a food desert where I am. There is a need to have some mixed use opportunities be available. I think that even in South Fulton, along like Fulton Industrial, we got, tons of warehouses and things like that, which were great maybe 30 or 40 years ago. But we can repurpose these areas and use them in a way that better suits the community as it stands today. And I think that we need to focus on creating opportunities for businesses, small businesses, mom and pop shops, but also even inviting major businesses, Fortune 500 companies to come and invest in the area, even if it's just to have a satellite office, just to bring another level of investment, a fresh look and take in our district. I think that we have room to improve, and we can do that. I think that there are areas, even in Mableton and Austell, where we can do that as well. So certainly, I think the one thing is that just take a step back and see exactly, what the actual constituents need, what they're looking for. I have a feeling they're going to look for, restaurants and bars and a little bit of a nightlife, and maybe even having, like I said, some Fortune 500 companies coming to the area. But I believe that ultimately, if we can do that, we can just repurpose. We don't need to rebuild necessarily. Let's use the spaces that we have and use them for something more than just being a stale warehouse.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Carson?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What would you do to create a vibrant economic development area within your community?
Okay. I think the first thing, and I've said this a number of times in a number of spaces I've been in, I think oftentimes when we talk about opportunity zones and people want to spur along economic development, no one talks to the people in the community. There's no community benefit agreement to find out what the community wants. So District 38, if you talk to a number of individuals in Smyrna, they'll say education is important to me. I'm not really too much concerned about economic development. If you talk to individuals in South Cobb, yes, we want some economic development. And if you talk to individuals in city of South Fulton or in parts of Fulton County, the answers are mixed. So I think we have to find out what the community wants and what the community needs. And that might look differently for each community. So once we find that out, then I think we need to work with our partners to address those specific needs. There are partners who are, as I mentioned earlier, there are partners in the banking industry who are looking to do business in South Cobb, but they aren't able to make the connection and they aren't able to get to the people they need to so that they can offer that. Thirdly, I think it's important that we work on youth workforce development, provide opportunities for our youth so that can help spur economic development. And when I say workforce development, I'm talking about paid internships, possibly during the summer. I've seen it work for a number of years where youth are given the opportunity to work and be mentored. And then fourthly, in some communities, we need to start economic development starts with community development. How do we help to build the community up in areas where they're lacking? It might be parts of the community might be, there might be blighted homes. There might be, an excess of trash. So how do we work with our council persons, our mayors, and our commissioners to make sure that those needs are addressed? And again, collaboratively, we do things to make sure the community the economic growth is happening in the community, again, based on what the community needs are and not based on, something that we, may want to do.
Okay, thank you. And candidate Bray?
Sure. So completely agreed that community input is paramount. I'm not a resident of City South Fulton. I spend time there, but I am not a resident there. And because of that, I think it'd be presumptuous for me to come in and say, here's what I think we should be doing. So first and foremost, listening to folks to figure out what does that community want on the South Side? What type of economic development do they want? And then recruiting for that. One of the things that I've seen that has been a barrier to recruitment is transit. That a number of, like Mr. Petty mentioned, of wanting to recruit some of these larger Fortune 500 companies, if that's what the community indicates they're wanting, they say we don't want to come to an area that we can't offer transit. And so making, essentially sowing the seeds in the ground in such a way that when it comes time to do that sort of recruitment, all of the pieces are already in place so that it's a desirable place for a company to come and either headquarter or satellite out and bring those jobs and that opportunity.
Okay, so this next question, candidate Bray, let's start with you. So climate change and global warming is a major topic being debated on the national level. What is your stance on climate change, and what role do you think the district should play in preparing citizens for the impacts of climate change?
So, my position on climate change is that it's a real thing. It is not a hoax. The changing in our environment is because of human behavior. And if we don't do something quickly, we are going to miss the boat. So I think as far as what we can do, a lot of the things that we're doing individually don't really make as much of an impact as what we can do systematically. So for instance, some people might be familiar with what's called urban heat islands. So it's areas where there's just so much concrete that the whole area is hotter. It's 10 to 15 degrees hotter than it should be. And of course, that affects your cooling bills. And most importantly, it affects your health. Seniors are susceptible to increased heat. So green spaces. It's not just about having a nice place to go or a nice thing to look at. It actually solves a climate change issue of reducing the heat for a particular area. And I think that sort of development, that sort of smart development of making sure that we're building in such a way that we're working with the earth as opposed to against it, will serve us not just in now we have a green space to play in, but also in we are healthier people living in a place because we're in synergy with the environment around us.
Okay, thanks for that response. Candidate Carson?
Yes, climate change is real. Yes, I believe the scientists, and I would trust the science. I would lean on the scientists. I'm not a scientist, but I do recognize that climate change is real. I think it's important for us to work with our. I think it's important for us to work with individuals who are experts in agribusiness. I think it's important for us to work with individuals who are experts with regards to solar and wind, so that we can educate the community on possibly, some of our homes, particularly here in the city of South Fulton, they are 30-year-old homes, but how do we make sure that that some of these homes become more solar responsible? How do we make sure that we also provide tax incentives for those who, whose homes are converted, to using more solar energy? So I think there's ways for us to, as state senators, to lend our voice to the area of climate change. But again, I think, we have to work collaboratively with respect to working with our local and county officials to make sure that our citizens, have the things and have the opportunities that they need to address climate change. And education, if I may say, since I have a little more time, education is key. I think climate change, like so many other topics, have become politicized. So I think people just take a stance based on what party they're in. But most times people don't really have the full breadth and knowledge of what climate change really is and what it means. So I think part of that has to be educating citizens and using our partners to do that as well.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Petty?
I agree with Mr. Carson and Ms. Bray. Certainly, climate change is real. I think we've been getting warnings about this from scientists for decades now. I'm not a scientist. I don't know the science, but I do believe one thing that we can do as we learn from our scientists is we can also talk about, I think we referred to this earlier, is talk about making some of our cities more walkable, or at least bike rideable, if that is an actual word. I think that we need to look at creating ways to make sure that we don't always have to rely on cars to get in anywhere we want to go in the city. I think probably most of us would agree that we have a huge traffic problem here in Atlanta, in the Atlanta metro area. There's too many cars on the road. If we can kind of reduce that, we're also going to be talking about increasing maybe light rail, heavy rail, just investing in CobLink, investing in MARTA, and making sure that they have the up-to-date, most latest and greatest technology that's clean, that doesn't use crude oil as much. If we can start to make sure that we're paying and addressing and paying attention to those sorts of opportunities for us as we look towards how we get more clean, how we use or make available more non-oil based alternatives, I think that we need to do that. But I think that ultimately it's going to take all the different levels. Just as a state senator, we are not the ones that will be able to do it by ourselves. We'll have to go and talk to every single level of government, even at the federal level, to make sure that there's a unified approach, because ultimately I think this is something that we can all do and we all need to do, is to take a little bit more ownership of what we do and what we contribute to the pollution that's harming our particular environment. So I think that ultimately this is an issue that we believe the scientists, we hear what they've got to say and take their guidance, but we can start to do some of the groundwork on our end as well.
Okay, thank you. So before we wrap up, I'd like for each of you to share something personal about yourself that the public would be interested in knowing about you that could help them in their deliberations about you as a candidate. So let's start with Candidate Petty.
Wow, that's a great question. That's the first. I've never had that question. I think that for me, I kind of talked about it earlier, just, challenges that we all go through in life. I think that ultimately I am so blessed and fortunate to be in the seat where I am today, to be sitting here on a Thursday night in a candidacy for a state senate with at least two other great candidates here with the South Metro Democratic Women's Council. This is a blessing for me, and I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. So I think that ultimately, because I've had areas in my life in the past that I could have taken And if I had taken that path, along with that group of friends, instead of staying at home or doing my homework or going to football practice, then my life could have turned out differently. So I think the thing that I want our voters to know about me is just, I'm a real person, and I come from a real family. I come from challenges that I've had since very young, and I've found a way to encourage to overcome them. It has not always been easy. I think we all can have our own personal stories and share and learn from one another. But ultimately, it's the perseverance and the dedication to just doing the right thing every single day. And that's not always as easy as we probably try to make it seem. But ultimately, if you put in the work every single day, ultimately, the right outcome tends to happen. So that is, as a state senator, that's what I would be committed to doing, is just doing the work every single day, being present, showing up, and answering the call. I may not have the answer that moment. It may not even be a good day, but if we can just be there for one another and lean on each other and use each other's experience and expertise, I think we're all much better collectively as a group. And I've taken that approach in my own personal life. It served me well in the military. It served me well as an attorney. It serves me well even as a husband. So I think ultimately, I just want the voters to know that I'm committed to doing the work every single day.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Carson?
I was sitting here thinking about an answer to that question, and for me, it's two parts. One, I like to start out by letting people know that I'm a mama's boy. My mother, as I mentioned earlier, had me when she was 16 years old, and she unfortunately made her transition when she was 43. But my mother worked and served others tirelessly throughout her. We watched her go back to school and get her degree in catering, and she could cook and do anything. And we used to help her, and when we didn't have a car, but she was always serving others at sometimes the detriment of us. And I think for me, that's where I got this, this thing about serving people and just doing what I need to do to help people out. And that transitioned over to part two of what I want to say about leadership and serving others. In the early 2000s, I used to teach a class of 52 men every second Saturday of the month, and every man in the class had a life sentence in prison. And those men were dedicated to coming to that class because they wanted to hear what I had to say, not only about me, but how would I impart in them how to be better dads and be better husbands and be better people, even though they had life sentences in prison and they were never going to get out. So that was a humbling experience for me as a part of my service journey, to know that not only I had the opportunity to meet some unique men in a unique circumstance, but it also gave me an opportunity to serve in a capacity that I had never, if you had asked me, I'd never been incarcerated, never thought that I would go down that journey, but that was one of the blessings for me to serve people in that way and to lead a team of people, 45 people who were in prisons and jails throughout the state of Illinois on a weekly basis, really helping to meet the needs of people, and while they're incarcerated as well as when they get out.
Okay. Thank you. And Candidate Bray?
Yes, so I declared for this seat back in October. And as you mentioned earlier, we had a redrawing of our lines for the district in November, and that gave the incumbent an opportunity to get me drawn out of my district. And at that point in time, I had the kind of the choice to stay where I had lived for the past decade and run in an open seat, or I would have to move quickly to remain in District 38. And I made the choice to remain in District 38 because I want to represent this district. I'm not the kid who has been, wanting to be in politics since they were a child, and any seat is good enough. It's not about any seat, it's about this seat. So what I would say to voters, you were saying what would inform them on why they would vote for me. That same level of dedication, that same level of tenacity. When I have a goal, I will do whatever I need to do to meet that goal. And I'll bring that same attitude to the Gold Dome to fight on behalf of the district.
All right. So to wrap up this question and answer session, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing, and we'll start with candidate Bray, then go to candidate Petty, and end with candidate Carson.
So thank you so much. Thank you for facilitating. Thank you, Ms. Gloria, for keeping us on our toes and making sure we don't go over time. And thank you for those who are listening now or on Facebook or might be watching this tomorrow on a restream. Again, my name is Melody Bray, and I'm asking for your vote as the next senator of District 38. I want to be the kind of senator who listens, the kind of senator who's willing to admit when they're wrong and pivot and do something different, the kind of senator who is willing to push and be thoughtful and innovative. I'm an advocate by nature. That's one of the reasons I went into law, and I want to advocate for all of us moving forward in education, in transit, in healthcare, in economic development, as we've spoken of tonight. I want people to be proud of where they live. And it's so proud that they start to invite others into the areas, into their neighborhoods, where they have great affordable housing and jobs that pay well. We have so many assets in our district. We just need someone with a vision and a heart and a desire to show up and push us forward. And I believe I'm the one who can do that. You can head to brayforgasenate.com. You can follow me on social media at brayforgasenate on all the social channels. And I hope that if you haven't voted already, that I can earn your vote tomorrow or on Tuesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Ingram, and to the South Metro Democratic Women's Council. Thank you again for putting this forum on. Again, my name is Adam Petty. As we've kind of talked about throughout the evening, this is a very pivotal moment in history. I would venture to say history of this country, certainly right here in the state of Georgia. When I was in law school in 2008, Ohio was like the swing state, and everybody was vying for what was going on in Ohio. And just by fortune, I'm here in Georgia now, and Georgia is that state now. Georgia is absolutely deciding what happens on a national platform. Because of that, this particular district needs a leader who's going to be present, needs a leader who is going to be active and engaged in every single aspect of what a state senator is expected to do, and also think outside the box and be creative. I think that ultimately with a Democratic governor, and if Stacey Abrams becomes our governor, we are going to need, whether we're the majority or the minority in the General Assembly, we're going to need advocates who are willing and able to stand in the well and either support or vehemently oppose a bill for the right reason, and to do it with integrity, to do it with dedication, and to do it with an ability to help persuade people both inside that room and in the committee hearings. I believe that my particular experience has given me the unique ability to be able to do that. As a trial lawyer, for a living, I take facts, I research, I apply those facts, I give argument, and I respond to opposing argument. And then just as a business owner, I know exactly what it is to have a fledgling business and to struggle to try and push and keep it and grow it, and to make sure that it is a benefit and asset to that local community. I fight every single day. I'm passionate about the young men I spoke about earlier. They are our next generation. I need to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to help preserve this particular moment in time for our next generation. So my name is Adam Petty, adamforga.com. I want to thank you all for your opportunity, for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to earning your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ingram. It was a pleasure to meet you. Good to see you, Ms. Jenkins, and those who were on the call. I'm Michael Carson, a candidate for State Senate for District 38. I'm a veteran, husband, father. I also have a legal career. I'm a paralegal. I've been a paralegal for more than 30 plus years. Started in the Air Force as a paralegal, and currently serve as a paralegal for a prominent non-profit organization. This district is at a crossroads, and we've been at a crossroads for quite some time, but I think this year is unique. and that we are at a crossroads. And you need someone who's already formed relationships in Cobb County and in Fulton County. I'm proud of the work over the years with the Cobb Progressives in Cobb County and the work we were doing around the environmental issues, criminal justice issues, and the like. I'm proud of the work that I did with one of Cobb's public safety agencies, where we worked with the Cobb Police to make sure that implicit bias and mental health, individuals with mental health challenges were met and added more of that to their training. I'm proud of my work with Atlanta Municipal Court as a sworn volunteer for the Restorative Justice Program, as well as my current work now with DA Fonnie Willis's office as a Conviction Integrity Unit Board member. City of South Fulton, I'm on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm part of Black Male Initiative Georgia. We do a lot of work around civic engagement, criminal justice reform, and the like. So a vast experience, vast relationships already. So going into this seat, going into the office as your next state senator, I already have the relationships with a number of individuals in both counties who are looking for someone to be ready on day one. So if I'm fortunate enough to earn your vote, I would appreciate it. I'm asking you for your vote. Early voting is tomorrow. Voting is on next Tuesday, Election Day. Hope to see you out there this weekend or on next Tuesday as we continue to take our case to the people and meet people where they're at, to let them know that I'm the right candidate for this moment and moment in time for District 38. So thank you guys again for the opportunity. Go to carsonforsenate.com to learn more about my platform and the things that you've told me that you care about. And again, hopefully we can get your vote and your support. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank all the candidates for participating in this discussion this evening. You all have some really nice plans and thorough answers and responses to the questions. So thank you. Now I'll turn the microphone over to Ms. Jenkins to close out.
Unmuting myself. Well, what can I say but thank you, thank you. Special thank you to our moderators, Dr. Ingram and Ms. Fisher, and a special thank you to a very professional group of candidates. It was so refreshing not to hear anybody attacking the other person. You talked about the issue. You answered the questions in the way you chose to, and we appreciate that. The South Metro Democratic women invited all of the candidates. The incumbent did not respond either by email or by phone call to our invitation, so obviously she was not here tonight. A few announcements. Tomorrow, as they've said, is the last day for early voting. I went to vote today and I voted at the East Point Library. And I was just elated with the number of people that were out there voting. And in the group that I was in, you know, we get to talking of when they ask one person your birthday, then everybody else starts talking about their age. So I'm going to say in that group, the average age was 70. And there were so many men voting. And both of those situations are unusual for East Point, because usually when I go to vote, I just walk in, there's nobody there, maybe one or two other people. But I had to wait in line today, and that really felt good. Third thing, I want to commend Representative Mandisha Thomas, who's also one of our members, on an excellent forum with the candidates for Agricultural Commission this past Tuesday night. I had an opportunity to see and hear, and I had a chance to change my vote. And I want to really thank her for that. Fulton County election and registration is in need of poll workers. Yes, we vote on Tuesday, but we may have a runoff, and we definitely will have an election in November. So if you're interested in being a poll worker, put your name and your number in the chat, and you can earn up to $275 per day. So anybody need a part-time job to pay postage on all of those flyers that have been mailed out? That's a chance. Again, thank you so much for joining us. And this is our last forum for this series. We'll start up again if there is a runoff. If not, please look for us in October when we start our forums again. Thank you. And if we stand together, we will win. Have a good evening.